Good evening, and welcome to today evening's program, the Connection Series. This is in collaboration with our partners at the American Institute of Indian Studies. We're very delighted to have Philip Lutkindorf, the president, and Purnima Mehta, the executive director for India, the United States India Education Foundation. Adam Groski, thank you for your support. And of course, the American Center and the American Embassy, Craig Dicker and Richard Pinkham are here, so thank you again. Really, the aim of today's event, the inaugural lecture, was to bring scholars both from the US as well as in India in connection with each other. And as I found out today, our two celebrated poets, Anne and Janice, I really haven't met before. So a big round of applause for them, please. And special thanks to Anne Waldman, who, despite a delayed flight from New York, missed connections in Heathrow, managed to make it here on time. So thank you very much. Today's event actually would have not been possible without the support of a faculty director of mine, Dr. Gary Tubb, as well as Dr. Shrikant Reddy, who's the associate professor at the Department of English at the University of Chicago. And he was really the architect for bringing our two key speakers together. I think he knows both of them. So very delighted and indebted to him to suggest them as speakers to us. And we're also very grateful to Dr. Gitanjali Joshi Mishra, who is the assistant professor at Amity University, Lucknow, and a 2008 Fulbright scholar who has traveled specially from Lucknow for today's event. So a big round of applause to her too. In establishing a center in Delhi, the University of Chicago really draws upon a very long and rich history of excellence in scholarship, research, and teaching that is related to South Asia. It aims to create new opportunities for a broader and deeper understanding of the region's past and present. In the 2.5 years that the center has been established in Delhi, it already serves as a base for our undergraduate, graduate, and professional students studying in India. It also catalyzes interdisciplinary research and discourse, for which the University of Chicago is very well known. Our Department of English and the program in creative writing promote a very global perspective on literary arts, both in theory and contemporary practice. With symposium on contemporary Anglophone Indian poetry, literary translations, and readings like today's event, the University Center in Delhi is proud to contribute to an expanding forum for literary arts in our transnational community. So with those very short words, I'm going to now call upon Dr. Gitanjali Joshi Mishra to introduce our speakers and to begin the session.
Thank you, Aditi. Ladies and gentlemen, from time immemorial, we have sung our songs and told our stories to please and to teach, to correct, to redress, to heal pain, to steal moments of bliss in a very banal human life. Be it the great epics of India that sang the Holy Gita, the poetry of the Psalms, the ayats of the Quran, or the melody of Gurbani. Poetry is one step that mankind has taken to get closer to his or her own divinity. And today, this is exactly what we are going to do. We are going to sing poetry over here because we sing and write poetry because we are members of the human race, ladies and gentlemen. We sing and write poetry because our feet touch the ground while our imagination seeks the secret of the cosmos. Therefore, it is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome to you this evening to the songs and poetry of two poets of exceptional merit, Janice Perriott and Anne Waldman. I must not progress in the evening, without congratulating University of Central Chicago in New Delhi. We have AIIIS, we have USIF, and we have American Center, who've come up with this brilliant idea of having this connection series, bringing two writers from different geographies, different backgrounds, and putting them together on one platter for us and creating magic and music out of it. That is tremendous. So big round of applause for this lovely evening over here that we have. Also, our two guests today belong to two different backgrounds completely. Janice Perriott hails from Assam, Meghalaya, the tea plantation, the gardens, the hilly areas. And then we have the celebrated Anne Waldman, who represents the spirit and the zeal of the 1970s in America. So I'm pretty sure that this evening here, we will be able to find a connection in their songs with their spirits, their bodies, and their souls. Without further ado, let me introduce our first poet for the evening, Janice Perriott. Janice Perriott is the author of Boats on Land, a collection of short stories, and Seahorse, a novel. She was awarded the Young Writer Award from the Sahitya Academy, Indian National Academy of Letters, and the Crossword Book Award for Fiction in 2013. She studied English literature at St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and history of art at the School of Oriental and African Studies, London. Her work, including art reviews, cultural features, book reviews, fiction, and poetry, has featured in a wide selection of national magazines and newspapers. She lives in New Delhi, India. So when this event was taking place, of course, I'm a beat, I've known Anne Waldman. I met her because I'm a beat scholar, been studying beat literature for 8 years. But Janice was a new name for me. So I started Googling up information on Janice, and I saw that she's written this wonderful book called Boats on Land. And I started going through Goodreads comments because that's really what I do when I first pick up a book. And there was one quote that said that it's a brilliantly written book, buy it, but do not lend it to anyone. So I was like, fine, this is one book I'm going to pick up. And I started reading the lovely stories that transported me back to my childhood. You know, the lovely stories, they come from this hilly background, the tea plantations, Assam in particular, the Northeast, which is not very well represented in literature. And I felt I was reading Enid Blyton again. It's like a bedtime stories for adults, I would say. I will now welcome our second guest for the evening, Anne Waldman. Internationally recognized and acclaimed poet, Anne Waldman has been an active member of the Outrider experimental poetry community, a culture she has helped create and nurture for over 4 decades as writer, editor, teacher, performer, Magpie scholar, infrastructure curator, and cultural political activist. Her poetry is recognized in the lineage of Whitman and Ginsberg, and in the Beat, New York School, and Black Mountain trajectories of the New American Poetry. Waldman is a recipient of the Before Columbus Foundation for Lifetime Achievement, bestowed on her by Ismail Reed, American Book Awards Lifetime Achievement, a 2013 Guggenheim Fellowship, the Poetry Society of America Shelley Memorial Award, and has served 6 years as the Chancellor of the Academy of American Poets. The Huffington Post names her as one of the top advocates for American poetry. In 2015, I had this privilege of meeting Anne Waldman in Brussels in a European Beat Studies Network conference. I was the sole participant from India, already feeling very lonely, not being able to find any connection. And then I met her, and my presentation was the last. I was talking about the influence of Indian philosophy on the writings of Allen Ginsberg. And Anne Waldman was sitting right in the front seat. I was trying to have a very confident demeanor, but my legs were so shaky because I was feeling, oh my God, I should not go wrong anywhere. So ladies and gentlemen, I would like to begin this evening by calling our first guest here, Janice Perriard, for her magical recitation. Janice, it's all yours. Thank you.
Well, good evening, and it's absolutely fantastic to be here. Thank you so much for extending an invitation to me. It's warm and it's generous, and it's been so lovely. I know that the University of Chicago Center in Delhi hosts a really exciting range of events through the year, and I'm so happy to be sort of featuring in as part of their calendar. Apart from that, I'm also utterly privileged and honored to be sharing reading space with Anne, who is astounding, as we all know. It really is very, very special. And I was very nervous about putting together sort of a little curated collection of poems for this evening. But I did pick about 7 or 8 short poems. And they all sort of just organically fell into clusters of geographically located poems. So they begin where my poetry begins, which is Shillong, a hill station in Meghalaya, in the far northeast of India. And I do come from a very, very mixed sort of heritage, very mixed background. But I was born into the Khasi community, and the Khasis had no script. So we were a largely oral culture until the mid-1800s. We preserved our history through song and stories and folk tales. So my first poem is about language. It is about Khasi. It is about naming the world through orality. And it's called Our Names. Our names are old names, unwritten, unrecorded, wrenched from stone, Maungap, Mausenram, Mauplung, or coaxed from water, Yam, Umlinka, Pernai. Light as the wind on a white stork's back which travelled here in summer and rested at Demthring. They aren't carved on our monoliths. The Maubin Na are smooth from relentless wind and rain. We have no letters with which to etch those come and gone, save the sounds of our names we set to music. They aren't embedded in Laukantang. Our sacred forests remain untouched, nor cast down rivers as sacrificial flowers. Instead, they travel with us on our children's backs in rough bamboo baskets heavier than stone. Our names are old names, untranslated, sitting uneasy on a foreigner's tongue, untraceable on parchment, save for stories behind our names we set to music. No names, save for old names. After water, and stone, Mao. Where will your history be found? For that, you must play our music and search for Lom Sopet Pneng, the mountain at the center of the sky. For those of you who might not know, Meghalaya is also a largely Christian state. It's also a very deeply conservative Christian state. And my next poem talks about church going, especially in relation to my grandmother, who dragged me to church very, very often on Sundays. I'm just trying to find that. It's called Small Liturgy. The church I went to had 4 bells to startle the sky. Those sounds sometimes came from far away and unexpectedly when walking through the cemetery with flowers for my grandparents. How perfect to hear them here in this crystallized silence. The graveyard is a wading pool of memories. I am dragged back to Sunday mornings of church going with my grandmother, the row of parked cars rendering small roads smaller, the click of footfall, the streams of faithfuls whose tributary hands dip into the cauldron of blessed water, those tall arches that swept above me like stone rainbows, the long stained windows, playground for many angled light, the row of saints caught in stoic ceramic holiness. And we would choose a pew among hundreds, somewhere in the middle. My feet barely touched ground. Yet the test, I thought, was in the dust-grated kneeling, how graceful the bent of head, how tightly clasped the hands. Hymn book in lap was time for dreaming up stories of my own to explain how the fish was cooked to feed the 5,000, how Lazarus felt when he opened his eyes and once again saw morning. All these interrupted by song and mournful organ, the rasp of scratchy microphone. The bread, I thought, was broken into small pieces because Jesus was only one man and there wasn't that much of him to go around. When I pass this place of worship now, the wooden door has shrunk to the eye of a needle. My feet have touched ground. Thank you. My grandfather was a gunsmith and a poet, and I always thought that was the most odd and interesting combination. When I was a child, I would sit in his workshop and watch him work, and it was utterly fascinating to see him wield all of this machinery. I wrote a poem about it many, many years later, and it's called World Wars. He made guns, my grandfather, in a workshop slammed against a dirty wall in the rough part of the city, next to the Chinese dentist with fake plastic flowers in his waiting room. All day, he buffed, shaved, and sharpened on a table of creased, unknowable wood. Hands, lined deep with grease and grainy gunpowder, picked at dog pins, rivets, and fiction springs, names as harsh as the machines he conjured to kill the wild. I don't know when he had time for poetry, how he heard the music of nature while hammering magazine caps, saw the world anew while settling viewfinders gone askew. Perhaps when evening settled and the dentist's droning drill was silenced, when lantern lit and pool of light hiding hammer, chisel, and knife, he was inspired to place word after word after word onto paper in a line of carefully polished bullets. we move on to Portugal. And strange as this may sound, it's because my mother's part of the family traveled many hundreds of years ago from Lisbon to Goa and stayed on and never left. And a couple of years ago, I made what I thought very grandly was a pilgrimage to Lisbon. I thought I would land in this magnificent city and feel an instant connection because in some way I was back home. I did land in Lisbon and felt absolutely nothing. It was admittedly a very lovely city, but that was it really, until I sort of wandered up some sloping sort of cobbled street and found a church that was built right above the spot where Saint Anthony was born. For those of you who might not know, Saint Anthony was the patron saint of Lisbon. And he's also the saint of lost things. And that's exactly what the poem's called. The Saint of Lost Things. We gathered, the old women and I, in the church of Saint Anthony, perched on the pews as birds on wire slung across the sky. They flicked rosaries between tree-twig fingers, and I knotted air nervously into a long scarf of silence. What brought us here this afternoon, when the Lisbon sun beckoned everyone outside? Apart worlds and ages, wide echoing valleys, such distances are covered here as flight of seagulls, them and me. But we come, our ancient hearts grasping at hope. We stare at liveried altar, heavy with the distinctions of saint and toddler, bringing to them our losses, limitless as the sea somewhere heaving behind us. Over sacred stone our grief we scatter. I imagine them lilies each night he gathers in his arms. It draws us here, stark space below us. We sway gently in the breeze, while fresco walls of redemption dampen and peel green, guilty seaweed. We ignore it, the sound of water lapping, praying we don't lose, as in time, all else, the small, distant ground beneath. We move on to elsewhere in Europe. I lived for many years in the UK. I studied there and lived there for a while. And the last three poems are set sort of on my wanderings around the country. The first one is called Greenwich. I was in a long-distance relationship at the time, and for those of you who might have been in a long-distance relationship at any point in their lives, you know how difficult they can be. Oddly enough, we met at Greenwich, in a place where time begins and ends, and for anyone who's been in a long-distance relationship, you know how important time can be. Wow. I've managed to lose the poem, even though I've very carefully marked everything. Found it. Okay. Greenwich. At the place where time begins and ends, we search for spaces between lines, watched by sunken-eyed skies, piteously weeping. These trees rising, watershed for lives that spill over damp dog grounds. What leaves? Green goslings shuddering in a sudden river breeze, darkling bark that wraps our insides chased with dripful longing. At Hilltop Ruin we crank up archaic machinery, a sun follower at heart, a cryptic medieval tunnel tossed toward the discovery of stars. At last, us alone, through stone-gated passage where the world is halved, hung, and quartered. We scramble for direction, such pale, limpid light, and wait for the enormity of thin, invisible line to split our hearts. Love, such distances must separate, or kill with long, lingering hope. I have a sister in the UK who often drags me for walks around the countryside. And she's lovely. The walks are often very tedious and very difficult, but I love her and I go for them anyway. We were wandering around the Brecon Beacons at one point in Wales, and we saw some horses, and I thought, I must write a horse poem in the grand tradition of horse poems by some of our favorite poets, Larkin and Hughes and Sylvia Plath and Enright, and there's me. This one's called Three Horses. Beyond sun-touched heath, cloven and murmuring, icy stream, that ruined paraparetic castle, we trudge as old pilgrims. Under, song of mud, maddened oak leaves, while scent of late hawthorn throws scurrilous surprises of edging summer. At hilltop, before sweet sweep of slopes to massacred boulders, Paleolithic burial ground of kings and farmers, three horses, watching. Aligned in a painting, heavy-hooved wanderers, wet fisheye reflections deep and dark as graves. Something in me, slow taproot, moves beyond this gaping silver fence. Brown arcs lower, long grassy breaths, wanton creatures, him and me, we breathe into each other's faces and struggle to find the faint memory of love and freedom. What it means to be unheld, tethered only to the tragic sound of wind in open spaces. Last poem. My sister's a doctor. She often drags me around for medical conferences. I have no idea what I do in those places, but luckily for me, they're often held in these sort of back of beyond, out in the wilderness, beautiful old houses. And this particular poem was written in a place, again, in the Welsh countryside, in this manor house in fall, in autumn, and it's called Mimesis. Cavernous, this room of culled eggshells, edge to tidy edge, such clean shores of solitude, cold white chamber of birth or death, I travel in softening September. Straighten a bath mat, end a dripping tap, ghost echo of footsteps and breath. Behind the shower, a whole wall mirror, cool, clear slab, hidden doorway in childhood to a world of infinite song and summer, transformed now to looking glass. Slow, patient reflector of my graceless undressing, spooled clothing, the eventual amazing lightness of air on skin. I touch this bark, scathed by familiar longing, lined by the persistent wrench of hours, pulled to open earth, and marked by secret network of scars. Beyond the window, past raw pecan plumbing, the world is in autumn, and trees turn russet yellow. I turn quietly like a leaf. Thank you.
The charm of the written word lies in its ability not only to touch the intellect, but to transcend and get to your soul. I believe that's all what we experienced here today. Beautiful works, Janice. It transported me completely. How lyrical and just beautiful. That's it. All right, next I would like to call Anne Waldman.
Thank you so much. Such an honor to be here, and thank you for all of the people in the room who've helped support this event. Thank you, Aditi. Thank you to Srikanth Reddy, our mutual friend. Seems to be a mutual friend with a lot of us here, and very delighted. So I'm going to begin, and thank you for your introduction and your presentation. She had naked sadhus at this conference up on the huge screen, and music, and you know, it's a very staid literary conference, so it was quite a delight. I'm going to start with some recent things. Feeling somewhat traumatized by recent events in my own world. I won't say more, but the poems touch on this. And I'm based in New York City. I live part of the year in Boulder, Colorado. where I was one of the founders of the Naropa University, the first Buddhist-inspired college in the West. And so I'll read some things at the end, some work I've done with another faculty from the Therigatha, which are the songs and hymns of the Buddha, so the sons and daughters of the Buddha, Buddhist nuns and monks. But in New York, I've been, caught up with a lot of the events of recent days and protest and poets and artists gathering out in the streets and trying to hold, we talk about this time as the post-truth time, which I think is a little bit dangerous. And this will be one of the topics at the Jaipur Festival. It's supposed to be some sort of debate where we will debate whether we are in a post-truth time or not. So I'm going to hold to relative and absolute truth. And in terms of relative truth, it's, the Buddhist view is this co-arising interconnectedness, the pratitya samutpada, and that we're all in this together and we're all projecting, and, there has to be safety net for that beautiful net, really Indra's net of interconnectedness. And so to suddenly decide that a label or a term where people are not standing by their word, there's a lot of parrying and deception and very direct sort of insult. I mean, it's hard if you're sensitive to language and sensitive to a view of humanity and a kind of discourse that's open and in good spirit. So this has been on my mind lately. And my long trip over here, because there was a delay, this kept, sort of going. And I kept saying, I'm so glad to be getting away from some of this intensity. Anyway, this is a recent piece, Dénouement. And the day would be proud of itself going on as if it hadn't already collapsed, had not been destroyed, riven, all the people mad and metabolically downcast. It's around the eyes, they said. It's around the hearts. The city was reeling. People were coming out to the street in the way they wanted to see where the guy lived and boasted so as to mock the event. It wasn't over. It wasn't going to rest. The guy was not real, as the day, as the year, the century, the epic shared was not real. The tribulation he ensued was not real, but it was that affect that mattered. What would suffer? It was the warmest year on record, as if that wasn't enough to make some idiot pause and pausing resist, and if resisting insist on being heard and calibrated so that measures were taken round the clock, ice caps photographed melting and all the rest, a pole away from accountability. How ugly would it go? How ugly would it get? Resistance had to resist. And it had already happened, if you stopped to think. Someone had gotten up and walked this far and then paused to take stock for the last time. It was the last time the human had a chance, the last one to be observant and cry and stomp and take stock and be like the something that had melted. And as if healing could ever be, it would be theater, a spectacle, Kampe, like the kabuki you just saw, imitating the resolution between a sword and a fox and a country and its honor, the last straw of honor, broken on its back. And blue was invoked in the silk scarf that draped the emperor's chair, where he sat timeless and waiting for the play to begin. We were it, played upon. But could that be true and yet be dénouement, with hope still streaming in beneath the surface, and then dark applause from all the centuries come raining down, and the actors, the warriors, the bodhisattvas pick themselves up and start all over again? A few years back, when our President Obama had gotten the Peace Prize, and when Sarkozy was banning the headscarf, and it was a tumultuous time, and I was there actually as a guest of the State Department and kind of representing America. And I have to say, I'm just a poet. I have my feelings, but my opinions don't really count for much. And so there was Q&A, and it was a Muslim school, actually, very, very wonderful students, separated the women and the men, and there were questions from the women's side and about the banning of the scarf, and Sarkozy, and I said, and they looked so extraordinarily beautiful. I said, "You just all look so beautiful." And then from the other side were some very interesting questions about the appropriateness of our president, U.S. president, getting the prize, considering the state of the world. But the best question, which stumped me, was from a young scholar saying, "Can you tell us, Ms. Waldman, what were the agrarian policies of Franklin Delano Roosevelt?" I thought, okay, this is refreshing. So I don't have a poem about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but there's something about the Anthropocene. Anthropocene or Anthropocene blues. Sound deterritorializes weather. Deterritorializes weather. Realizes weather, and my love clings to you, sings to you in the new weathers within a tragedy of the Anthropocene, nothing not held hostage by the hand of man. Will we fail to save our world? We dream replicas of ourselves, fragile, broken, robotic thought bubbles inside the shadow, a looming possibility this new year. To wake up? Could it be? An anthropoid seared and scared from the forest, slow in development, now infantilized, much like us, stressed, yet perhaps ready to fight this scenario. The forest made the monkey and the cave and the steppe, the human, and now what makes us suppler, more human? Climate grief, a fierce tenderness toward the destruction of our world? Questions or actions? My love for you sings for you, world. I've got those Anthropocene blues. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Drones over Jordan coming after me, singing the crimes of man. I've got those Anthropocene blues. That's for you. It's called Conversation with a Visionary Botanist. He was a lot of things, but he worked for the UN. He would give advice on endangered creatures, on endangered climates. He helped, analyze the Black Sea at one point. The question was, is there any possible life? And there was some possible slime mold life, and the slime molds actually are going to inherit the planet, I think, and I'm already working on my slime mold poetics. It's got a lot of slurping and smacking sounds. Anyway, this is a conversation with a visionary botanist, Peter Warshall. Green grass, you said. I had said, our spectrum must be green. And you said the fungal mat, my coryzol. And then the love affair of fungi and algae and lean or loan or loam or lawn, not necessary in many a place, but what they establish, a symbiosis. Green from Old English grow on, because tidal life is grow on, because plankton is grow on, because green, because... Saying about dryness, I said how it might look, why not always green, but meant more like, what is going on? And you said drought or doubt. Then I asked how urgent this. You say we walk in a dark proverbial forest, that it be protected and that it be protozoa, that they be alive too in you. I whisper, imagine a death day that is dawn and drawn of cerebral work, but not manicured to be a cradle of green. The knots where suns were burning came to me. You ran on. We walked by the ocean, deciding to do this for our love, our attraction. Green is slang for money, I say. Oh, no, not that. People out here riding a beast the color of sand. Where on the spectrum, I ask? We'll walk on the cold tundra, you say. Talk about nanometers, photosynthesis, because grass and adherent will be present in your eye, never absent. This was the measure of our time, Peter. This is an older piece that's still relevant. Problem Not Solving. And I was working in Venice and standing in front of the Canaletto of Venice's Ghetto Vecchio, the old ghetto. Vecchio, the word for foundry. And I was contemplating these arms and harms. This is an area near the former Jewish section of Venice, and it's called the Ghetto Vecchio. And I was thinking of, you know, the contemporary ongoing strife in the Middle East, and still that it looms, and, you know, maybe no steps forward of late. Problem not solving. So there's a relationship between foundry and the arms and so on, and it's very near this former foundry area. And metal was cast in the dream of the ghetto, and metal was forged for cannons, 1390 in Ur, in Pre, and nightmare of ghetto, and laboratory of ghetto, a metal mentality, where it takes a long harm, a long arm, a long hatching this mentality of force, of problem not solving your ghetto, and in the name of decree, and forging a metal mentality with harming arms, and where you can live under a low ceiling, where you can live and problem not solving, 5,000 in a crammed room, undream it now, your nightmare, not allowed into the light of other campos and canals, your arms held and not being able to reach out across a map, a city divided and problem not solving, undream, problem not solving the nightmare of ghetto, or problem not solving your night. Palestine, building of more arsenals in the arms that harm and reach out and harm human and fleshly. I will sit here and sound here and reach out arms human and fleshly to ghetto, to Gaza. I don't know, I want something to lighten up here. Let's see. I have one more that's a little intense, but it's also, there's been some resolution, the terrible situation in Carolina with the massacre year ago, and then the recent trial and so on. So it's called Dirge South. South in the spectrum events, murderous events, good South, the longer warrior, not bad South, unreconstructed warrior, get ready room for hell, untethered hatred, sky aflame, stars aligned for the non-rational, desponded maps down under a long forgiving, and then reckoning, long, who forgive? Would she, would they, would he, mothers and fathers forgive, brothers and sisters forgive, see the bigger picture, ethno-historical days, a sum, we do holy ritual and turning, we do secular ritual turning, we continue you, dear murder, this is domestic terrorism. Body, holy blackness, holy blackness, holy dark continent in the cross dream of liberation. But there, a collective groan, longer groan, a vision. You want psyche, you cross a world together, sing of victims and crime. You curse, you will not sing, must not sing, then must sing. Sing the evil down, sing centuries unmitigated disaster, arrive at 100-year plan. 1,000-year plan withers without your spirit, and all go down, and this white body go down. Do something, white body, and white go down, and all go down. What genocide? Any room for poetry? And the Navajo poet lowers his head. Children, he says, this time, room for poetry, this time, sorry, hominid, what? This is domestic terrorism. Wall you were up against at all oh, murder, detail, all of it, Emmanuel, oh, come, man, could tell, rupture, scream, what next sing, could tell it's over, wash, come over us, Emmanuel, oh, come, leader, minister, senator, young man, dead in his time, then all lay in blood, washed in the blood, and this body go down, and all go down, unsolved, rip again, structure of rupture, the architectures that don't work. What then? Saints in heaven that disappeared, erased, all the saints in heaven down on their knees for this. Apotheosis, the 9, assumption of bodies, lift, innocence, when you go to slaughter, broke down into violence, degeneration, up against and scream, pressuring brain and mourn, ghosts begging for light, mount in the heat, pile up layers of atrocity in the house of the Lord. What law will bind, hold back? Slaughter of innocents. Oh, you syndicates of samsara, breed genocide, proud genocide flag of the murderer, insignias and shells of battered hatred, proud to wear by the battered, weak, and damned. Room for poetry. This is domestic terrorism. The 9. Cynthia Hurd, 54, Susie Jackson, 87, Ethel Lance, 70 years old, Reverend DePayne Middleton, Doctor, 49, Honorable Reverend Clementa Pickney, 41, Taiwanza Sanders, 26, Reverend Daniel Simmons, Sr., 74, Reverend Sharonda Singleton, 45, Myra Thompson, 59. For rest, for succor, arrive, arrive. When they say never coming, then arrive. Eruption of chaos, then arrive. Blood and twin to the universe, always chaos, arrive. How many guns can you buy today? Locked in chaos like fever, a cosmos of endarkenment. Mask, mine or yours, masked in privilege, mine or yours, turning around as word in the mouth. Oh, try to take it off, sob me a river. Language is biodegradable. Come south, the dirge, south, rotted man inside, taking it down. Legion of terrorism, this land, infernal descent, inborn. Wake up, hold it up, arrive. Insulated. American soil saturated with the blood of innocence. They are the holders, will hold, they will hold. Oh, blessings, oh, dark lamb, come, come, oh, come, oh, come, oh, come, oh, come, oh, dark lamb, help me, Jesus, help us, Jesus, whatever the way, hold, hold, shake, shake these white bodies down, arise or all go down, and this white body go down, and help us, Buddha, help us, Yahweh, help us, help us, help us, dark land, help me, Brahma, help us, Confucius, help Muhammad, dark lamb on the way. I'm going to read just a little bit from this piece, whole book called Gossamer. This is an allegory about the rescue of poetry's archive and a whole struggle with the deciders who want to murder poetry and don't want to save the precious archive. This was actually an internal battle with some of my deciders at Naropa, just how to take care of our precious tapes that go back to the founding of our school in 1974. And we have people like John Cage and Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs and many, many artists over the years, Anna Carson and Meredith Monk, and wonderful oral archive. So it's a plea for orality, and so there's an Anne and a doppelganger Anne. There's a factotum created by the deciders who want to sort of thwart this plan of rescue, and there's a kind of plot to maybe steal the archive and bury it in the tundra, which is not a good idea, actually. So it gets a little fanciful, but I'll read a few bits from it. The double is always present in our psyches. I follow her. What is hidden, responding to what is revealed, is the binary axis on which the investigation pivots. I hide behind the screen of my own investigations, still longing for a shadowy, more flagrant, more casual other cause. The double writes books on desire and the need to colonize the host bodies of the deciders. Long fascinated by the stories of double women, I pick up the tale of the two Lilas, which presents us with a woman's view and that of a double or shadow. In one story, a woman has two husbands, a demonic husband whom she loathes and an incestuous lover whom she adores. Both women share a single lover. In the other story, he is cunning. In older variants of the title of the shadow woman, the shadow other serves to protect the woman from any defilement or strain at the hand of the demonic husband, the shadow who keeps the pure woman of the real world separate from the lustful, passionate woman of a subterranean world. The shadow women seem to be more like a shard of a dream. I study types of dreams described by Cicero, lifted from Philo Alexandrinus's De Somnis, night apparition, oracular, enigmatic, horama, onieros, crematismos. There is also a sense of double universes, as time and space are both mapped separately in a Vedic cosmology, although the two dimensions are parallel. This mythology tells not only of double people at 2 points on a spectrum, but of double worlds that provide 2 layers of the spectrum of space-time. The doubles in myths or dream or illusion make possible a process that seems to protect the presenter in this life from the dangers of complete solipsism. Or you might go mad. The deciders keep interrupting the narration. They control the base. The deciders create their factotums. They create imposters. So here's the Anne being taken apart. The deciders took Anne apart, organ by organ, sinew by sinew, and they copied these parts into the husk of the new Anne with skill and dark intent. As they did this, they would pause, muling into their sinister autopsy. Little organ of original Anne, what can you do for us now? Little eyes of original Anne, what will you accomplish now? And you, sinews that bind operation of motion, where walk you now? Tongue that composed many ballads and odes for your time, how will you sing? They gloated in their desire to reveal the nothingness of all things and to murder poetry. They could not remove or mutate her consciousness, which stayed intact in the retreat and isolation of the original Anne. They made their copy a mockery of the original Anne, undoing the manna of original Anne, who they cast into a virtual prison while they went about their plot of alienating humans from their linguistic natures. Language would become separated, torn from its vital dwelling place. Humans would be living out history in a life of unrelenting state without poetry. The archive of the multiple voices was endangered, years in the making, to preserve breath and intellect, imagination's other place as psychic inscription, and to let future humans know some of us were not just killing one another. You would never guess, they said. Look at our creation, a perfect simulacrum. And they looked to a time of acquiescence where the populace would be silenced, where the attention span of humans, ever waning, would ride the waves of mediocrats and hear tell endlessly, monotonously, the slow drip of the undulating fortunes of celebrity worlds and become even more accustomed and inured to the beat and thrum of war, and more in lockdown, and more in lockdown. There was a decider of the 5th rank of the state of rectilinear space as it applies to a subject's metabolism, decider of how many gold bonnets on that bonnet, how many gold stars on that bonnet, or for one entering the room of major decision-making, feeling diminished, there was a decider sitting behind a massive desk of protocol and power, facing windows of gray light in sad, anemic offices over which more deciders preside, deciders of who leaves or stays, who gets laid off, who must be demoted, who closes rank. It was not a happy world. And then she sent a message to the base. So this is an ongoing, struggle and battle goes on. Whatever you do to me, know this. I know this from Derrida. There's a great book called Archive by Jacques Derrida and talks about the archons. And in the book, I declare myself an archon, a protector of this poetry's oral archive, and I will do battle, till the death. Here's the little litany about what archive is. Archive is shelter. Archive is the disembodied voice of a palpable consciousness. Archive is a jumbled dream. Archive needs poetry you must never forget. Archive is inscription, is aspiration. Archive tells many stories. I am Archon, and a mere inscripted postcard is archive. When we return to our speech and start our own country, take this as directive. Memory of an animal is also yours. Archive all opposable thumbs we have record of, and many wisdom identities. Archive's murmur circulates around the room. Archive lets originals breathe. You can't temper with archive. It's a strange cosmology. Archive is antithesis to a war on memory and stealing a poet fire. Archive is the tender footprint. Archive will not tread on the footprints of the most vulnerable. Archive is a trust. Let archive record the names of those going out of this world. Tristan, Albatross, all disappeared, all suicided. Archive listens into the margins. Archive is a privileged topology. Archive exists as a map of the future beyond the exigencies of electronic media, which has transformed the relative reality of Homo sapiens sapiens. If you are good at this, please memorize. Are you good at this? Memorize archive. Archive could be safe from composite strife. Gain intellectual control of the collection. Consider cassette tape life expectancy. Water pipes run through storage space. Materials are housed in a 100-year floodplain with environmental swings. No climate control. Security. Multiple keys to the storage exist. The space is not secured. Walls that leave space at ceiling height can be easily breached. Digital collections on CDs which are at risk themselves due to disk failure and equipment obsolescence. Archive is housed by and reanimates sentient beings. Archive is nest, is house, is reverie. Archive will hold you. And the line comes, I swear it from the breath. Archive is Obad, is Alba, is Tagalid, is seduction. Archive is dying, and archive will not die. Who lives to push the buttons to install the implants of archive? A far agent, a forest, a mountain to climb, an orange sunset, a cloth for the body, strong ropes to circle and carry, dynamite with an app for soil content, an app to read constellations in the sky, moon a fingernail above you is a modest proposal, and sometimes a wildebeest on the tundra remembers a former life, and an albatross crossed your shadow at sea one day. Tristan, whose name means sadness, quested the grail and drank a love potion. This is the sublimated test of future identity. 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 So this is called Songs of the Sons and Daughters of Buddha. This was published by Shambhala, Centaur Editions, and I worked with the poet Andrew Schelling, who also translates from the Sanskrit. So these are somewhat literal in places. These are preserved in the Pali scriptures, these texts, the earliest written documents known to Buddhism. They did not get into written form, which is to say transcribed into palm leaf, until a great Buddhist council took place in Sri Lanka during the reign of King Vatagamani, circa 8977 BC. I think that's right. This was after the poems were first composed, and many are ascribed to direct disciples of Gautama Buddha, which means they had been in circulation for 350 years before finding their way into written form. So obviously they went through many translations. And there's a little essay and some notes on this, but I'll just do a couple. And I use the names of the nuns as in the titles. Adhikasi. Adhikasi speaks. I was a prostitute with fees as large as the whole kingdom of Kasi. The sheriff fixed it. I was priceless. Then I got disgusted with my figure. No one was interested in it anymore. Used up, tired, weary. This old body, good for sex, this sex money body. Where does it go? How far does it go? Never again, chasing rebirth after rebirth after rebirth. Mahakala speaks. This lady who cremates the dead, black as a crow, she takes an old corpse and breaks off a thigh bone, takes an old corpse and breaks off a forearm, cracks an old skull and sets it out like a bowl of milk for me to look at. Witless brain, don't you get it? Whatever you do just ends up here. Get finished with karma, finished with rebirth. No more bones of mine on the slag heap. She thought of suicide, but gave it up singing. Distracted, too passionate, dumb about the way things work. I was stung and tossed by memories, haunted, you could say. I went on like this, wandering for 7 years, thin, pale, desperate, nothing to hold me. Taking a rope, I went to the woods. Hanging is better than this slow life. The noose was strong. I tied it to the branch of a tree, flung it round my neck, when suddenly, look, it snapped. Not my neck, my heart was free. And there's a final one. It's kind of apocalyptic one. This is Sisupakala speaks with Mara. Sisupakala was sure of herself, her senses pure, her perception clear. She drank life's elixir, a sweet fluid sustaining that replenished her mind. Mara, the tempter, as you know, interrupts. Don't forget where you've been before, those other lives you led in bittersweet realm, animals, demons, pretas, your friends, companions. Think about it, long for it, he whispers in her ear. Yearn again for the Kamaloka and the seductive beauty of the dark gods who rule in shadow and the blissed out gods who rule by day. They'll take you, caress your naked body. She, stop, Mara. Don't you know those gods go from birth to death, again, become this, become that, become this again, become that. You know the Kamaloka stinks with lust. I tell you the world is blazing, blazing, the whole world's in flames. I tell you it's flared up, the world is shaken, your words are shaken, the whole world's ablaze. Some things never change. And then I'll close with, this is called Chenrezig Walks Among Us. And Chenrezig is the wonderful, there's a story about, Chenrezig is the Tibetan name for Avalokiteshvara, Kuan Yin, kind of a male-female deity, a bodhisattva who, as legend has it, clears the world of suffering, sweeps out all the suffering, and then turns back and sees it's all filled up again, sheds a tear. Out of that tear, Tara appears, and more arms and legs and hearts to combat, the samsara in this world. And the name Chenrezig actually translates, and I think also the Avalokiteshvara as looking down with compassion. So, and then Amitabha Buddha is invoked. But anyway, this is a chant, and it was written with a Dalai Lama in mind, who's supposed to be an emanation of Chenrezig. Swept away all suffering, gathered it up in a quantum leap, sucked it up until it returned. And when he looked back over his shoulder and saw all suffering come back in a great wave, all suffering riding in, filling up nooks and crannies and crevices and templates of the world, all suffering filling neurons and quarks and leptons, troubling minds of fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, lovers, all sentient beings suffering, toxins of passion, aggression, ignorance in the middle of the night, strapped in demon mind, nowhere to hide when all pounding suffering rides in, and mind splits in 1,000 pieces. Chenrezig wept, and head split in 1,000 pieces, and mighty red fire Buddha Amitabha leans in and puts the puzzle back together, wires it with tantric thread, adds some extra arms, extra heads, a conglomeration of more tendencies. This wisdom body to rid the world of all suffering. More arms and heads take charge, build it better, a deity to maximize power of Bodhisattva to ease all suffering. And now Chenrezig had 1,000 arms in all directions of space, with numerous accoutrements, and under those arms 1,000 harps, better to banish suffering, all suffering of Tibet, of India, of Pakistan. Wherever his crystal eyes land, whatever map of suffering, Europe, USA, empty Israel, Palestine, empty China, Russia, Japan, empty India, 11 heads with 11 third eyes, and bigger, build it bigger, more wisdom eyes in all the pores of the body. Chenrezig walks among us, humble prince toward all systems of empire, walks among us as all constituent forms, precious ink, diamond, scepter, skull, cup of blood, thigh bone, trumpet, dissolve in mind, and lotus at his feet arises again through cracks of a concrete city, or charnel grounds, eternal war, and extinction is nothing but the extinction of all suffering inside the extinction of self, whose form is emptiness, to power of compassion. Oh, push, push against the darkness, push, push, push against the darkness, push, 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 push against the darkness. All suffering, push, push against the darkness, push, push against the darkness. Thank you.